The fork froze halfway to my son's mouth. Across the table, my mother didn't even look at him when she said it. No dessert for your child. Maybe he'll learn. The room went quiet in that sharp, unnatural way silence gets when it's forced. Chocolate cake sat inches from my son's fingers, already sliced, already promised. My sister's kids were laughing, mouths smeared with frosting, crumbs dotting the tablecloth like evidence. My son didn't cry. That's what broke me. He just nodded. Like he understood punishment he hadn't earned. I felt something cold settle behind my ribs. Heavy, patient, I reached for his hand. We stood, chairs scraped. No one stopped us. And as I walked toward the door, I knew this wasn't over, not even close. Family dinners were my mother's favorite stage. Everything had rules. Seating. Portions. Gratitude performed loudly and often. You learned early who mattered by who she excused and who she corrected. My sister, Lena, had always been exempt. Golden child, effortless forgiveness. Her kids broke glasses, screamed through meals, wiped their hands on the curtains. My mother laughed it off. Kids will be kids. My son asked permission before breathing. I used to think if I stayed calm, stayed helpful, stayed quiet, things would even out. That fairness was delayed, not denied. That was before the divorce. Before I moved back to town. Before my mother started calling me ungrateful with the same mouth she used to ask me for help. I paid bills she didn't tell my sister about. Handled paperwork she pretended not to understand. Covered gaps. Smoothed edges, and still, she looked at my child like a lesson waiting to be taught. I saw his reflection in the dark window as we left, small, confused. Trying to be brave for me. I promised him ice cream on the drive home. I promised myself something else. The message came at 11:03 p.m. Mortgage due, no greeting. No punctuation. Just expectation. I stared at the screen, thumb hovering. Something about the timing felt deliberate. Calculated. I didn't answer. Minutes passed. Then another message. Can you handle it tonight? That's when the pattern clicked into place. Late night urgency. Vague language. Always phrased like a favor, never a responsibility. Always after my sister posted photos of new furniture, vacations, things bought with money that never seemed to include shared obligations. I opened my banking app. Then my email. Then the folder I hadn't touched in years. The one where I saved documents out of habit, not intention. Silence stretched. My phone buzzed again. Please don't start. I smiled for the first time that night. The mortgage wasn't the only thing overdue. There were notices, late fees, second warnings, and my name, mine, listed as the primary contact. Not co-signer, not emergency, primary. My mother had refinanced 3 years earlier, quietly, efficiently. She'd used my credit history to secure better terms, telling me it was temporary. That my sister would take over payments once she got settled. Settled never came. Instead, payments came from me. Masked as emergencies. One-off requests. Just this month, I'll fix it soon. I scrolled through statements. My pulse slowing as anger sharpened into clarity. They hadn't just relied on me. They'd planned on me. I remembered every time my mother praised Lena's freedom. Every time she called me stable like it was my assigned role. Every time she punished my son for existing out of line. This wasn't favoritism. It was extraction. I locked the phone. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I started calculating. Revenge doesn't require noise, it requires patience. I spent the next 2 weeks saying nothing. I paid nothing. I gathered everything. Emails, loan documents, text threads where my mother admitted the arrangement. Worked better this way. I scheduled consultations during lunch breaks. Asked questions with a steady voice. What happens if the primary contact withdraws consent? What happens if fraud is documented? What happens if the payments stop and responsibility snaps back where it belongs? I learned my leverage. I learned how quiet power feels when it finally sits right in your hands. At dinners, I watched them more closely. My mother cutting my son off mid-sentence. Lena accepting praise for effort she never made, the cake served again. No invitation extended. They mistook my silence for submission. That was their last mistake. At 11:47 p. I replied. I won't be covering it anymore. 3 dots appeared instantly. Disappeared. Reappear in the call. I let it ring twice. Why would you say that? My mother demanded, skipping fear and going straight to offense. I leaned back on the couch calm. Centered. My son slept down the hall, full from ice cream, dreaming peacefully. I reviewed the loan, I said. Silence, then sharp. You're overreacting. I forwarded the documents to a lawyer, I continued. And the bank, they're very interested in how my name was used. Her breath hitched. From the background, I heard Lena. What's happening? My mother's voice dropped. You wouldn't do this to family. I smiled again. You did this to family. I said. I'm just done fixing it. She tried guilt. Then anger, then panic. The power shift was audible. A crack in her certainty. You'll ruin us, she whispered. No, I said. You already did. I'm just stepping out of the way. I ended the call, blocked the number. And for the first time, the silence felt earned. The house didn't collapse overnight. But it did change. The bank stopped calling me. The messages stopped coming. Lena stopped posting. Weeks later, my mother showed up unannounced. Smaller somehow. Less certain. She apologized. Sort of. I listened. I didn't invite her in. My son tugged at my sleeve, asking if we could go for ice cream. I said yes. As we walked past her, I felt the echo of that dinner table. The cake. The lesson she'd tried to teach. Some lessons take time. Some just require the right ending. I squeezed my son's hand and kept walking.